Yo, yo, yo. Halfback, good morning, Dynasty. It's Sunday morning, right before the games will take place. I hope you are all doing well. My name is Brendan. We are joined today with our co-host, Tyler. Tyler, how the heck you feeling, my man?
Feeling good, Brendan. Still recovering from the champ Iron Mike, the big night last night, man. How you feeling?
Yeah, hey, another day, another dollar. Another day, another 50-something-year-old legend fighting. So it's always good stuff, man. So crazy, crazy week. I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving, Tyler. Was it good?
It was awesome, man. Nice and low key, small. Just the wife and my parents, and my niece had some great food. -1 football game. That was a bummer, but overall, man, it was great. It's great to have that day off during the week. I never complain there. How about you?
Yeah, something like 2 weekdays off leading into a nice weekend. About to watch a ton of football where a lot of guys are out due to COVID. So it's pretty interesting. I think this has been one of the most interesting weeks slash weekends that I've experienced during the pandemic. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. So on today's show, we're going to talk about some key actives and inactives. Tyler, I know the list is incredibly long today due to COVID, but then we'll do a juicy matchup and we'll also do some stardom sit-ums. Real quick before we begin, to any of you listening, you can always tweet at us. We're at Halfback Dynasty. You can hit us up on Instagram at Halfback Dynasty. You can even get personal, send us an email, halfbackdynasty@gmail.com, or you can find us on dynastyleaguefootball.com. My name is McCaffsteys. Tyler is Gator Sense. So, Tyler, let's jump in. What do we got? Who's playing? Who's not playing?
Let's do it, man. Hopefully everybody's got a couple hours here to get through this list, but I'll try and rip through it here. So we'll start in the morning games, or excuse me, morning my time, but the afternoon games, 1 p.m. Eastern games. Starting with Larry Fitzgerald, wide out for the Cardinals. He is out with an illness. I think they put him on IR actually, so he could be out for a few weeks. Might just be the illness IR. I think there's a little bit of a difference this year, so
Mm-hmm.
monitor him moving forward. Christian Kirk's already been a good play, so not much of a change there. I think if anything, Andy Isabella probably gets a little bit of a bump this week, but obviously a little bit of a risky play. But as my man Brendan mentioned, there's a lot of people out, so Andy Isabella might end up being a decent option. Um, Todd Gurley, running back for Atlanta, has already been ruled out with a knee injury. I think a lot of people were worried about his knee coming into the season, and hopefully this is not the beginning of the end for Todd Gurley, but definitely out this week. I think what value he had left will take a gigantic hit through this because people were already worried about him. So Brian Hill, probably a pretty sneaky, decent play this week if you're desperate at running back. Again, with all the outs, he's a decent option. Julio Jones is questionable. He it looks like he's trending towards playing, but definitely questionable. Could be limited anyways. Obviously, he didn't finish the game last week, so whatever's going on with Jones' hamstring is certainly serious at this point. It's caused issues throughout the whole season. I think everybody kind of knows who you're looking at. Calvin Ridley. This is Zacharias, I think is how you say his name. I could be totally wrong on
Sounds
that.
pretty good.
He could get a bump. Yeah, Hayden Hurst, tight end, also hurting. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. He's questionable. Luke Stalker would be who gets the call if Hurst sits. Wouldn't recommend playing him either way. I think the biggest person that benefits here is probably Calvin Ridley, but we'll see what happens there. John Brown, wide receiver for Buffalo, is out. So Gabriel Davis probably gets a nice boost today. Obviously, they've been throwing the ball a lot in Buffalo. Allen's been slinging it, so he could easily be a plug and play flex option this week. Um, Christian McCaffrey again will be out. I think by now we all know it's just Mike Davis. That's what you're looking at here. Next up, Giovanni Bernard, running back for Cincinnati, is a concussion. He's questionable. I think he's trending towards playing, but Bernard or Samaje Perine, whoever ends up playing without Burrow, I would not even consider playing almost anybody on Cincinnati. I think as we mentioned, Tyler Boyd in our earlier episode this week is probably the safest play just due to his skill set. But I wouldn't be looking at any running backs coming off the Bengals in this game. Michael Thomas for Cincinnati, that is doubtful with a hamstring. I doubt anybody
You
even
got
has
me
him
there.
rostered. So no big news there. Not the Michael Thomas, the other Michael Thomas. So Phillip Rivers, Indy has a toe issue. Still expected to play, but Jacoby Brissett would be the next one up if he does not go. Sticking with Indy, Zach Pascal, questionable with a knee, likely a game time call. So make sure to monitor that up till the kickoff here. Desmond Patman would probably be the next guy up, to be honest. He had a great combine. He's a big guy. He's super fast. So keep an eye on him. Jonathan Taylor, running back for Indy, sticking in Indy. Wow, Indy's got some issues this week. Is out. He has COVID. So definitely make sure he's out of your lineup. I think Jordan Wilkins will handle a majority of the between the 20s carries between the tackles, and Nyheim Hines probably a pretty good play this week. He's got really high value. Could easily blow up. Could easily have 2-3 touchdowns. He's going to catch a lot of balls. So good play there. Moving to Jacksonville, Gardner Minshew the second is questionable. Looking like based on reports, we're going to see Mike Glennon this week over Jake Luton. So I don't think anybody's got Mike Glennon rostered, probably in Superflex on the desperation. But man, it's been a while since the T-play game, so it's kind of who we're looking at. Sticking with Jacksonville, Chris Conley is out. DJ Chark is out. So Laviska Shenault Jr. and Keelan Cole Sr. are kind of they're kind of who's there. I think Colin Johnson might get a couple more looks, but not a safe play. They don't really have a great tight end. It's Tyler Eifert, so I would expect Laviska Shenault, honestly, and Cole to have the best shot at playing well, with Mike Glennon under center, so factor that in. Moving on to the Chargers, everybody's season-saving darling, Balaj is questionable with an ankle. They activated Austin Eckler, but it's unclear if he'll play and or start in general. So I would monitor that. I doubt they throw Eckler in, but we'll see what happens. Tua Tagovailoa for Miami is doubtful with a thumb, so obviously Fitzmagic will be back in this week. Sticking with Miami, Selvin Ahmed is out. That's unfortunate. Myles Gaskin remains on IR, so Matt eating a burrito is probably the best option you got this week. Hakeem Grant, Miami wide receiver, is questionable, looking like a game time decision as well. I know in formats with return yardage, he's probably a pretty good option. Everywhere else, I doubt it. So if you play in a return yardage league, make sure and watch him. Irv Smith Jr., tight end from Minnesota, is doubtful. Obviously, Kyle Rudolph will step in and take the majority of the tight end targets. Adam Thielen is doubtful. Kind of an interesting one here. He tested positive earlier in the week for COVID. Turns out that was a false positive, so his status for Sunday is still up in the air. But I don't think he's been cleared to play. So tricky there. I would not leave Thielen in your lineup, just to be safe, or check it, literally 2 minutes before your lineup locks. Obviously, Justin Jefferson would be the guy. I don't think there's any question there, but we'll see how he does with kind of top-end coverage. That's kind of what Thielen usually draws. So you might expect a huge game from Jefferson, but that may or may not happen. Rex Burkhead out on IR. He obviously snapped his ACL last week, so he is done for the year. Brandon's boy, N'Keal Harry, still questionable, but trending towards playing this week. So look for your 5 points there. Ryan Izzo, tight end for New England, hamstring questionable again. I don't think this guy is in anybody's lineup anyways, maybe in a deep start 3 tight end, something like that. I'm not real sure. But I don't know. I'm reading this report here. Sorry for stumbling. It said he should play through this injury as he has done most of the season, so I'm guessing he will play. We've got a kicker, so who cares? And then Adam Humphries, wide out for the Titans. Concussion remains out. Let me get to the afternoon games here. All right, so the 4 p.m. starts. I'm just going to lump them all into one. Every Denver quarterback that is legitimately a quarterback is out. So look elsewhere, probably for anybody on that team. I wouldn't feel safe starting anybody. Jerry Jeudy is questionable with an ankle injury. It's hard to say with what they got at QB if they'll even risk him. So I'd look elsewhere regardless. Tyler Higbee, tight end for the Rams, game time decision. Obviously, Gerald Everett would see a massive uptick. He's always been a very, very solid tight end when he's given the green light. So if Higbee sits, if you're not very deep at tight end and Everett's available and or you have Everett, I would roll him. Deonta Harris, wide receiver for New Orleans, is questionable. He did not practice all week, so I doubt he's playing. That means Marquez Callaway probably sees an uptick. Tevin Coleman, running back, out. Of course, he's a running back for San Francisco, so of course he's out. Jordan Reed, tight end, is questionable with an illness. Does not sound like COVID, but he's questionable. So Ross Dwelly would probably see the most uptick in targets. He had a couple decent games last year when Kittle missed some time. So worst comes to worst, man, he's a tight end. If he scores 3 points, he has a good week. So
One
and
reception,
last,
baby.
exactly. And last but not least, no surprise here, Brandon Ayuk remains out with he's still on the COVID-19 list. It sounds like Samuel will play, so he could be a very, very solid option this week. So I know I kind of ripped through that, Brendan, but that's kind of what we're looking at with inactives as of now. Anybody listening, I would still check your lineup literally minutes before it locks. With how crazy the COVID thing's been ripping through the NFL this week, you could have guys in warm-ups that all of a sudden don't play. So I wouldn't set your lineup 30 minutes before like we usually do and call it good. You might just double check everything.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's also a very important time to look at which types of players are being dropped. So if owners are panicking and they're in a must-win scenario to contend, they might drop some decent talent on the waivers to pick up a plug and play. So I would
Good
really
call.
monitor who is being flipped because you could get a great stash right about now, especially if you have the roster space. So a lot of interesting things here, Tyler. Basically, you can't play anybody this week is what's happening.
That's pretty ugly, man. If you've got solid depth this week, you're probably in a better situation than most. Yeah, it's pretty ugly.
Agreed. So if the trade deadline has not passed in your leagues, maybe explore selling some of these guys who've gotten that short-term value boost for future draft capital. Great player that you mentioned, whether he goes today or not, is Kalen Ballage. I'd be trying to sell him instantly to somebody who's contending, right? Those are the types of players that you want to flip and get anything you can for them. Real quick, going back to the Denver game, I know we've been having a lot of fun talking about this. Kendall Hinton, never even heard of that guy before until today, is getting the start under the gun. So he is a wide receiver that was on the roster. Now they are moving him to quarterback. Tyler, we noticed that ESPN took away his wide receiver designation and they switched him to quarterback already. And we had to have assumed it's because of Taysom Hill last week, where you could start a starting quarterback in the tight end slot. The sleeper platform, I don't think took away the designation for wide receiver. So if you feel good about it, if your league accepts it, start the guy, the quarterback in the wide receiver slot. If you don't feel good about it, then don't do it. But Tyler, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that you should be able to start Kendall Hinton today, wide receiver, or no?
I don't. I mean, I think what happened last week with Taysom Hill, I understand he had the positional designation all season, but I think that gave a rather unfair advantage to teams that had him in a non-superflex league. I think that was a bad call by ESPN. They knew he was going to be the starting quarterback long before the Sunday kickoff. So, I mean, if it was week 1 or 2, I think there would be less issue. But you have teams legitimately that, needed to win out or needed to win 2 out of 3 games to get into the playoffs that, that could have been an extremely unfair advantage. And I'm sure it
Mhm.
was in a lot of cases. I mean, you and I talked on Wednesday on our show that neither one of us fell victim to that. But no, I thought that was a pretty bad look by ESPN. You knew the guy was playing quarterback, whether he, like you and I predicted, whether he played 4 snaps or he played the whole game like he ended up doing. That's irrelevant. That was an extremely unfair advantage, and it didn't make sense to me. Again, he was named a starting quarterback. He wasn't named a starting quarterback slash tight end. So I think that's a bad look. And so, no, I do not think Hinton should be eligible to play at wide receiver either. We received a text, you and I, in our group chat for our one league, and sounds like Yahoo left his wide receiver designation in. So there's definitely platforms that are doing it. I've already seen a question on DLF. I would not play Hinton at any position, period. I think that game's going to be extremely ugly. Obviously, you and I missed on the last gimmicky quarterback, but I don't expect Denver to be competitive in this game.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm still baffled that we were wrong about Taysom Hill. I mean, Jameis Winston is a starting caliber quarterback, so it was really odd that they didn't give him the chance. But speaking about Taysom Hill, he's going to start again at quarterback, and they're probably going to keep him in the entire game. So definitely a sneaky play there. But, yeah, I think ESPN acted quickly because of the Taysom Hill designation. So, Tyler, really good stuff, man. I'm sure you spent hours putting that list together since it's about half of the NFL. So, like you said, I encourage people to check your lineups very frequently, 5 minutes leading up to the game's locking. Make sure that you plug your 1 p.m. Eastern games. Plug those players in the actual starting positions, not the flex. Tyler, I'm a big fan of if you have guys going at the first set of games, don't play them in your flex because then you can't swap them out if anything happens. So,
That's a good call. That's a good call, Brendan. It's funny
yeah.
to hear you stumble over the times as well, because everything runs on Eastern time, but I know the kickoffs are noon for you and they're 11 for me. So,
Yeah. I don't normally say 1 p.m. Eastern. It's so weird. 12 o'clock
right.
Central is it's smack in the middle of the day. But
For
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so, it makes sure, like, for example, the Steelers and Ravens game is getting flexed to Tuesday. That's a pretty sketchy game. Don't leave Juju Smith-Schuster in your wide receiver slot because then if you don't have anybody else to play Tuesday night, which obviously you wouldn't if the game gets canceled, you lose all those points in the wide receiver position. But if you put them in the flex, you might have somebody going Monday night and there might be more information about the game that you can sub in. So it's always a safer bet to play the guys who are playing the earliest games into your running back or wide receiver or tight end slots. Tyler,
Yeah,
let's jump in. I've
that's a
got
good
juicy. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
sorry, Brendan. That's a good point, man. I unless you have no other options. I personally think the Steelers Baltimore game is incredibly risky in general. I would try very, very hard to not wait for any of those guys on Tuesday. I don't know if you read this story, but obviously Baltimore, I think as of last night, had 18 players that tested positive. So I think that'll continue to domino. And I read a story that Baltimore could quite literally have to forfeit a game, but the logistics behind that are incredibly difficult because I guess I read in an NFL forfeit, neither team's players get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So they would all forfeit a paycheck, and obviously Pittsburgh really has no choice in the matter. Hasn't, excuse me, really done anything wrong, if you will. But yeah, I think with the amount of players that continue to pop up, I would try extremely hard, even if it's, like you said, Juju, Deontay Johnson, whoever it is, a really good asset. And you better be okay with your matchup. Maybe you can roll a zero, if maybe you're projected to win. And I mean, let's be honest, if you're playing a team that's not very good, and somebody like you, Brendan, who scores on average in our big league about 140, 150 a week, if you're playing one of the teams that isn't maybe a big score, you could probably gamble and take a zero and probably be okay. But you're
Mm-hmm.
also locked into the playoffs. So there's a lot of factors. But if you're fighting for a playoff spot and need to win, say, 1 or 2 games of the last 2 weeks, I wouldn't play anybody in that game to be safe.
Yeah, take the safe points. So you need them. It's do or die right now. And yeah, I was reading about that actually. If a team forfeits, I think it's unfair if the Ravens have to forfeit and the Steelers don't get paid. The only beneficial thing to come out of the team forfeiting is the other organization gets a win. That's like literally the only thing. But
Yeah.
keep in mind, I mean, the Steelers would essentially get a bye. So is that good? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, they're on a roll right now, so there's many different ways to look at it.
Yeah, not fair to the other teams. Obviously, it could disrupt their role. I also saw that in a forfeit, the final score is 2-0, so that'd be kind of interesting. But if Baltimore does forfeit, man, the only good thing to come out of that is, what do you think Juju's going to say? He's going to absolutely flip out.
Yeah, he's gonna head straight to Fortnite and play some Xbox.
Yeah, because he's been very outspoken as is, so he would absolutely lose it.
Yeah, that's crazy. But hey, it prevents maybe Juju was lined up. Fate had him, getting a huge injury on Tuesday. Maybe this prevents it.
Something, man.
You
Who
never
knows?
know. You never know.
Nope.
So cool. Tyler, you ready for the juicy matchup?
Let's roll, man. I didn't mean to keep interrupting you there, but you're just getting my mind rolling.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Honestly, really important things to talk about. It's more important than ever. The who you should start, where you should start. This week and probably next week will determine a lot of playoff positions in people's leagues.
Oh,
So
definitely.
it's incredibly
Definitely.
important, more so now than ever. But yeah, here we go. Juicy matchup. We're rolling the clip, baby. Boom. So I wanted to pick the Raiders and the Falcons this week, but the reason why I didn't is because I've already picked them both multiple times. Obviously, any team going up against the Falcons has a great shot of throwing up huge numbers. So I wanted to kind of stray away from that. I also really liked the Buffalo Bills versus the Los Angeles Chargers matchup. I think both quarterbacks, which I'll talk about in a second, will put up big numbers, meaning we'll see quite a few throwing touchdowns, passing touchdowns. But the game that kind of stood out to me here, Tyler, was the Minnesota Vikings versus the Carolina Panthers. So the Vikings defense ranks against positions. Against quarterbacks, they're 21st. Against running backs, they're 17th. Against wide receivers, they're 29th. Against tight ends, they are 19th. Carolina ranks against these positions, quarterback 16th, running backs 28th, wide receivers 9th, which is pretty solid defense, not going to lie. But tight ends 22nd. What stands out to me here is the Vikings are like the third, fourth worst defense against wide receivers in fantasy football. Josh Allen has a shot to put up 3 to 4 touchdowns. So I think there's a great opportunity for guys like Gabriel Davis to get a huge boost. Stephon Diggs will probably have a big week. But I really like that because I'm sorry, Carolina Panthers. I don't know. I'm stuck on the Bills game. I got confused for a second. Let me replay this for a second. So I think guys like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson will have a big week. There you go, Tyler. It's Sunday morning, man. Coffee's flowing. But yeah, so I really do feel that the Panthers will put up big numbers. Mike Davis should have hopefully a big week. Vikings ranked 17th against running back, so they're in the bottom half. I do think Dalvin Cook will also continue his monstrous season. Granted, the past 4 games combined, so the past month of football, he has 7 total touchdowns. He has 580 rushing yards, which is absolutely insane. The only down week he kind of had was against the Bears 2 weeks ago, which is totally understandable. Moving back to talking about Justin Jefferson, I think he's set up for a huge week if Adam Thielen is out. So I was reading reports about him too. It was a false negative, but they are preparing not to play him because of just the specific policies or whatever the regulations are. So I honestly don't think they're going to have him ready in time. It's really odd how they do that. Teddy Bridgewater will look to continue his streak. As I was mentioning, not Josh Allen in this game, but Teddy Bridgewater's actually been playing pretty well. If you look back at his previous games, he played well against a tough Kansas City defense and a Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. So the Vikings are for sure not as good against quarterbacks. So I think this could have a shot to be a high-scoring game. I'd like to see my boy DJ Moore ball out today, but usually that means Robbie Anderson's probably going to put up like 4 receptions, 120 yards, and a teeter. So we'll see what the heck happens there. I think it'll be a high-scoring game. I'm really excited to see what happens. I hope the Vikings lose so the Bears have a wild card shot, even though they probably won't.
There you go.
Sorry for the mix-up, Tyler. I'm thinking of like 6 different games at once, but what do you think about the Vikings versus the Panthers? What do you think about that matchup?
I like it, man. I think there's a lot to like on both sides, so it should be a fun matchup to watch. I agree. Teddy Bridgewater, man, he's had a really, really good season. He's a good quarterback. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Anderson versus Moore plays out. It seems like they've been going a little bit, you're getting back more to Moore. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how it plays out, man. But I like it. Yeah, I think Davis has a good shot. I think Jefferson, Cook, like you mentioned, there should be a lot of points to be had. And if you're fortunate enough to have a guy in your lineup on both sides, those are kind of the fun games when it could be a shootout and you're just watching red zone or the game and you got guys on both sides. It doesn't matter who has the ball, So.
Yeah, I like it. And a lot of people were actually down on DJ Moore to start the season, but he's like top 12 right now. He's ranked, I don't know, like 12th maybe in the wide receiver position. So he's actually producing at a pretty
Yeah,
good rate.
I think you should trade him, man. So I mean, if you want to make a trade on air right now, are mixing, like I think it's time to move on, Brendan. He's just not a good asset, man. It's time to move on.
Yeah. It was a nice text I got last night from you. So
Yeah, how many times do you think I'm going to text you that over the next week? Hey, man, you think about moving more?
yeah, I'm sure a lot. I'm sure a lot. If we get responses on Twitter that force me to do it, I'll consider it. All right. But cool. All right, let's move in. Let's move into the stardom sit-em. For the sits, I said sit every Baltimore Ravens player, every Pittsburgh Steeler player. It's just not safe. If you have to start any of them, I get it, but I'd rather go for the safe point, so I would not start anybody there. But now going back to the Bills versus the Chargers. Sorry for my mix-up earlier. I was really stoked about this matchup too. Tyler, I started talking about the Vikings and the Panthers, and then I was like, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, and I was like, wait a minute, those guys aren't on the Panthers. What am I saying?
Hey, it's
Um,
Sunday morning, man. It's all
yeah,
good.
yeah. I like how you were rolling with it. You're like, oh, maybe there was an NFL trade past the trade deadline. Those guys play for Carolina.
Hey, man, I was just letting you roll. I was letting you roll. I figured you knew what you were doing. I figured it was
Awesome.
going to play into a different segment, so.
Yeah. Jokes on all of you guys. Jokes on all of you. But I really do like the matchup. So what I was trying to say earlier is Josh Allen, we know he's capable of throwing up multiple touchdowns a game. I don't think the Chargers have the best defense, and the Chargers also move the ball pretty effectively. So that means that Justin Herbert will get the ball downfield for the Chargers, meaning that they'll score quicker, and that leaves more time for the Bills to proceed and move the ball themselves. So I think Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis are lining up for a great game. I'd almost expect a touchdown from each of them, which I know could be a pretty big guess, but it seems very doable.
Sure.
Now, the reason why I like Justin Herbert is because that man is throwing up like 3 passing touchdowns a game, like the entire season. So I don't know how many he has in total, but it seems like he gets like 40 fantasy points every single week. It's insane. The guy is really balling out right now. So you have 2 young quarterbacks capable of just dominating. I think there's going to be like 750, almost 800 passing yards total this game. So that's a big matchup in its own. I'd start both of them without hesitation. For running back, this is a little funky one. I know a lot of people are against this, but I'm going to tell you to start David Montgomery, running back for the Bears. Trubisky will get the start today. What this means is I feel they need to get the run game going. Trubisky is going to need to feel confident. Obviously, he feels the whole world is against him right now. What better way to move the ball and gain some confidence on the field than to give it to your running back? Let him produce, let him help you get downfield, and then you can set yourself up for some nice passes. Plus, the Packers defense ranks 30th against RBs. Packers defense sucks against running backs, believe it or not. Now, they're notoriously good against the Bears, which kind of sucks. It's devastating. So honestly, I'm sure the Bears won't win this game. They'll probably be up by like 2 touchdowns with 7 minutes left in the fourth, and then Aaron Rodgers will come down and win the game. It's probably what's going to happen, but David Montgomery should hopefully put up 80 rushing yards, maybe a touchdown, something like that. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson's the no-brainer, as we discussed with Thielen potentially being out. I think he's in for a huge game. He's capable of putting up huge numbers with Thielen there, but this is ultimately a big test, like you stated, Tyler, because of the fact we'll see how he operates under the top coverage. So regardless, the guy's a monster. I don't think it's really going to affect him much. I think he's going to show this game he is a top wide receiver. Lastly, tight end, I've got Evan Ingram. I think that the Giants have a great matchup against the Bengals. I wouldn't start anybody on the Bengals, like you mentioned, because Mixon's out, Bernard might be out, Burrow's obviously out. They are just not going to move the ball on offense, which means the defense will get turnovers. The Giants, who also have a pretty bad offense, will have a lot of opportunity here. Evan Ingram is an athletic beast. The only downside is he drops a few passes here and there. So if he really weren't dropping, a pass a game, he'd have an extra 2-3 points per game. But I think he's in line for a big one. The Giants feel pretty good coming into this game with a mediocre Bengals defense they're going up against. So that's what I've got, Tyler. Anything you want to add or take away from this?